Okay, well, as I said, thank you for coming back. Thank you for showing up, and thank you for coming back. As we went through the first part of the training, we talked about the values of nonprofits and what they bring, why they're a good investment, and then we followed through with why CSECC is a great option for giving, and ultimately that it really yields the most amount of money, all things considered, not the least of which is overhead, and why we really have a very low overhead in this program. So what we're going to do now, and we talked about your responsibilities as a key campaigner, and I gave you a model and showed you how you can actually do this in a 1 hour time. So we're going to look at the details now of the actual form. Has anybody had the privilege of using Prezi? Prezi. I've only had a few people. This application I'm going to show you now is done in Prezi, P-R-E-Z-I. I was introduced to it, bless you, last year for the first time. I call it PowerPoint on steroids. It's kind of a virtual tour here, you'll see. And so I say strap on your seatbelts because we're going to literally do a little virtual tour of the form. I'm going to go through it box by box, talk to you about the various transactions that can be executed with that form, and then I'll be highlighting what are some of the common mistakes, because there are some. And again, part of your responsibility is to be checking these forms to make sure that they are completed correctly and going back and getting them corrected if need be. So you ready to go? Strap on your seatbelts. Here we go. Ooh. Ah. Yeah. So this is the pledge form. What else is this, though? It's a piece of paper. Let me suggest to you that this little piece of paper is a life changer. This little piece of paper could be a life saver. Because when somebody fills out this form and designates to an organization or whatever and signs and turns it in and it gets processed, somebody's life or somebody's lives are going to be changed. And the person may never not know exactly who or what or where that trail their actual dollar. But you're usually connected to the organization that you're giving to, that you know that I filled this thing out, somebody's life is going to be altered to the better. Remember my mother. She wasn't destitute, but she got a service I couldn't give her. So this is really important. This is just not a little tiny piece of paper. It's a very powerful piece of paper. So as an introduction, there really are two forms in one. There's the top portion, which is really one form, and the bottom portion. The top portion is the instruction to the state controller. Okay? To the state controller relative to a payroll deduction. And it must be signed. There's a signature in the middle of the form. The bottom portion is the instruction to the PCFD on how to distribute the funds. It has its own signature at the bottom. So if the person's filled out the top and the bottom, they must have signed at the top and the bottom. This is one common mistake. They'll sign at the top, but they won't sign at the bottom. Consider it like there really are two separate forms. They've just been brought together in a single piece of paper. So the top portion is the instruction to the state controller with its own signature. The bottom portion is instruction to the PCFD relative to disbursement of funds with its own signature. So the top, the bottom, or as we say, you take it out. The bottom portion is you pay it out. Take it out, pay it out. It's like Sesame Street, you know, near, far. Take it out. I like Sesame Street. Pay it out. All right, is that clear? Two forms, two separate signatures. All right, so let's go through the form box by box. This is the top portion. Box number 1, Social Security number, will never, repeat, never be pre-populated for obvious reasons. It's a very confidential number. There are cases, though, certain instructions when it will have to be filled in, and I will go over that when we get there. But box number 1 will never be pre-printed. Boxes 2, 3, 4, and 5 will be pre-printed. The name, the agency code, the unit code will be pre-printed. And then in box 5, the current PCFD code. If the person is currently giving, this is a very important box. This is the one box you'll look at first because it really helps you determine if the form's been filled out correctly or not. If the person is currently giving, there will be a 3-digit PCFD code. They're currently giving, so they will have identified which United Way is managing their money. Remember, there are 29 of them, and it's on the back of the pledge form. They can designate which United Way manages their money. If they are currently not giving, what will be in box 5? Not nothing. 3 X's. If the person is not giving, in box 5 there will be 3 X's. If they're currently giving, a 3-digit code. If they're not giving, 3 X's. And as we go through the form, that'll be one of your most telltale signs about whether it's filled out correctly or not. So let's go to box A, new payroll deduction. Brand spanking new payroll deduction. I'm not giving now. So they check box A. They want to start. Remember, 86% of our state isn't currently giving. They check box A. They write in the PCFD code, one of the 29 PCFDs who will manage their money, and then the amount. So if they check box A, what must be in box 5? 3 X's. That is correct. If they check box A and there's a 3-digit code in box 5, that's a mistake. Now here's an easy way that could be misconstrued. Let's say I'm giving $10 right now. I decide to give $15. Well, it's $10, that's $15. I can say, oh, that's a new payroll deduction, right? I mean, you can construe that. I check box A. But I'm also going to have a 3-digit code in box 5. It's incorrect. It really will be B, we'll get to that in a minute, change my existing amount. So box A is brand spanking new, I'm not giving now, and there will be 3 X's in box 5. Is that clear? Okay, good. You guys are smart. So we go to box B, change my existing deduction. If I'm currently giving and I want to change that amount, up or down, I would check B and I'd write in the new amount. So if I check box B, what will be in box 5? A 3-digit code. Because I'm currently giving, I want to change the amount, theoretically, there will be a 3-digit PCFD code in box 5. All right, box C, delete. I no longer wish to contribute. If they check box C, what will be in box 5? A 3-digit code. I know I'm beating you up with this. Very good. Emphasis, emphasis. But I'm going over this because these are the kind, you will find these mistakes. It's easily, you're getting 2.5 hours worth of training. People out there, especially if they're giving for the first time, the form can be confusing. Yes, ma'am.
If somebody is currently giving, will box 5 be pre-populated with their PCFD?
I know, PCFD. The question is, if someone is currently giving, will box 5 be pre-printed with a 3-digit code? Yes. That's the indication that they're currently giving. If they're not giving, it'll be 3 X's. So box, yeah, yes, sir.
Where does the PCFD code come from for the section A?
They're all of them. They're on the back of the form. The question is, where does the PCFD code come from? On the back of the form, the 29 PCFDs are listed with their codes. They are also listed in the resource donor guide. Just inside, all 29 are also listed. So on the back of the form or in the resource donor guide, the 29 PCFDs are listed with their 3-digit codes. Good question. No. Yeah, the question is, are there more than the 29 listed? No. Remember I said anybody, any organization that wants to sign up, they just happen to be United Ways, submits an application and they get approved by Victims Comp. So for the last few years, these 29 are the ones that sign up. There are more than 29 United Ways in California, but these are the ones who wish to participate in the campaign and submit the applications. Good questions. So we go to box D, change my PCFD. You won't get this too often, but once in a while I see a shaking head out there. Typically someone said, well, why would one person pick one of the PCFDs over another? There's not really rocket science here. Typically, the person will pick the PCFD in the community in which they live, because I'm here. If I have a question or an issue about what's happening with my money, it's a local United Way, they're here. That's usually what people will do. But sometimes, let's say the person was working in LA, they got a promotion and they moved to Sacramento. So they were giving down there, to the local United Way in Los Angeles. Now they're up here and they decide they want to change it to Sacramento. So they might change it because they've moved. Or there just could be any other reason. Maybe they decide that maybe they live here, but they have family in Southern California, so they want the local United Way to manage their money. I mean, it's about as complicated as that. But usually they will change it for the most part because they've moved or just some other reason. But if they want to change the PCFD, they can. They check box D. They write in the 3-digit code of the new one and the amount, because they're rededicating themselves. So if they check box D, what must be in box 5? A 3-digit code. So if they're in Los Angeles, I think it's 004, and they moved to Sacramento, which is 024, so a 004 would have been in box 5, and then they would put Sacramento code under D. Yes, ma'am?
If the box 5 is already populated and they want to change their PCFD, are they supposed to just cross it out?
No, the question is, if they want to change their PCFD, do they cross out the PCFD code in box 5? No, they would check box D, and then they would write in the new PCFD code on the line there in this box D section.
Right. But you keep on referring back to box 5, so they don't even need to look at that then. That's just their old one.
That's their old one, yes. The question, yeah. If they check box D and they write in the new one, they don't cross out or do anything with box 5. Because what will happen when this gets key entered, the information on box D is what will get key entered and will change the PCFD code from the old to the new. Okay? Then E, continue my existing deduction. They just want to continue what they're giving. So they can check box E. They can sign, but not necessarily. Oops. So then F is a signature. I authorize the state controller to blah, blah, blah. Here's the key thing. Boxes A, B, C, and D. So transactions A, B, C, and D require 2 critical pieces of information. Number 1, the Social Security number. They must write it in box 1, all 9 digits. And number 2, it must be signed in box F. Let me repeat that. Boxes or transactions A, B, C, and D must have 2 pieces of information. The Social Security number, all 9 digits, and a signature. The reason is, number 1, without the Social Security number, the state controller cannot match the donor request to their record in their system, and therefore they can't execute it. The only link is the Social Security number. Okay? And it must be signed. It's authorizing the state controller to do this. If it's not signed, then the state controller is not authorized, and it won't go forward. It'll come back. The signature and the SSN are common mistakes, the lack of either one of them. And in a few minutes, I'm going to talk about confidentiality, because some people say, well, I'm reluctant to give you my SSN. I'll talk about that. But it's critical, and without it, the state controller cannot execute the instruction. And it must be signed. Otherwise, the form will come back. Okay? Is that clear? So then we're going to move to box G. This is the one-time gift giving. Remember the chart? There was payroll deduction, but the other option was a one-time gift. So the person may just decide to write a check, and they check box G, they write in the amount, and you see make check payable to CSECC. Even if they're designating to a specific nonprofit, the check must be made out to CSECC, because that physical check doesn't go to the nonprofit. It gets deposited here at the local United Way, and the account that they can deposit checks is a CSECC account. If it's made out to nonprofit ABC, it'll have to go back because they cannot deposit that check. Is that clear? So if they make out a check on a one-time donation, it must be made out to CSECC. Then they can deposit, remember the chart, and eventually the money will get to the nonprofit. Then we go to H, decline. Remember my example that 19 times I wrote decline? A person's not giving, they don't want to give, that's fine. And they can check the box and they can initial it. Now, do they have to check the box and initial it if they're declining? No. I mean, the piece of paper can just be tossed. Nothing will change. They're not giving now. But remember, we go back to talking about 100% ask. We ask that you try and get 100% of your forms back. And be reasonable. And the reason is, if you don't get a form back, you're not exactly sure what the individual's intent is. Whether giving, not giving, they may have thought that they gave you the form. Turns out it's stuck in their desk somewhere. So what often key campaigners will do, will do a spreadsheet or a table of all the individuals they're responsible for, the days everything was passed out, and as they're getting it back, they're checking it off. And again, reasonable. If you haven't heard, maybe go back once, maybe twice, but maybe just once to the person and just say, I see I haven't gotten your form back. Do you have any questions? Can I help you with anything? And they go, oh, gee, yeah, I forgot, or nah, whatever it is. But not to be, in their face and, hey, you haven't gotten the form back. It's the third time I've come back to you. We have just some overzealot key campaigners. Be respectful, but don't assume because you didn't get the form back that that's really what they intended. At least one time to go back and say, I haven't gotten your form, can I answer any questions, any assistance, and go from there. That make sense? Yes, ma'am.
If they currently have payroll deductions and they do not complete the form, will it continue?
The question is, if they currently have a payroll deduction and they don't complete the form, will it continue? Yes. Remember the Energizer Bunny. It just keeps going. It just keeps going until they make a change. So that's H, decline. So if they decline, what would be in box 5? 3 X's. Here's a common mistake. Is they're currently giving, so there's 3 digits in box 5, and they check decline. What is that? It's an error. It's an error. Because what will happen is, if it's not caught, the form will just get tossed. So come January, and this is a key piece, all of this theoretically, these transactions will take effect in the January pay period. This is the one time where during the campaign, because there's thousands and thousands of forms, it's all being collected, going out, coming back, getting key entered, and then it'll get sent to the state controller, and it will take effect in the January pay period. And then after that, anybody can make any changes or initiate something. But this, if they check decline, they'll be surprised when they get their January paycheck and the deduction's still being taken out. So they must check what? If they really want to stop their payroll deduction. C, decline. And needs 2 pieces of information. Number 1, Social Security number, and number 2, a signature. Very good. So you feel pretty comfortable with the top part? These are all the various transactions. A, B, C, and D, remember, require a Social Security number and a signature. Yes, sir. Are you talking about box D?
Yes, but actually box 10, not with the
Okay, yeah, that box 10 is all part of the D transaction. D is I want to change my PCFD. There's a question around box 10 which is associated with checking box D. I want to change my PCFD. You would have to put in the new PCFD code and the amount you want deducted.
In that case, you also need to fill up B as well?
No. These are all separate transactions. Yeah, you wouldn't. B is I want to change my deduction amount. D, as in dog, is I'm changing the PCFD who is managing my money. It's a different transaction.
I think what he's trying to ask is, if they want to change their amount in 10, do they put the new amount? If they don't, they put the existing amount.
Yeah, you'd put whatever. In D, the question is, how do I fill out box 10, the amount? In box D, you're changing your PCFD. And you could be changing the amount. If it's the same, if you were giving $10, but you're just changing the PCFD, you'd write in a new PCFD code, and you'd write $10. If you're changing the PCFD and you want to change the amount, you could do that as well.
But then I don't need to fill B.
You would not fill B. B is just simply changing the amount. D is, I'm changing the PCFD who manages my money, and I might keep the same deduction or I might change it.
Change my deduction will change as well.
Correct. Okay? Yes,
So I know you mentioned this really
it's okay.
but just for clarification, so if they choose to stop their payroll deduction, when can they see that? So I thought I heard you say January is when it stops?
The question is if they stop their deduction, they check C, when will it take effect? Theoretically, all of this during the campaign is being rolled up, will be processed, and should take effect in the January pay period.
Which is the paycheck you get.
February 1. It's a check you get February 1st, a January pay period.
So on that note, I have a question. Let's say somebody's experienced a hardship during the middle of the year in May, and they want to stop their deduction. Do they contact United Way, the state controller's office, or victims' compensation?
The question is if, say, someone's fell in hardship in next May, after they decide they want to change amount or stop the deduction, who do they contact? What they would do is they would simply download a form. They just have to complete another form. They could download the form off. The campaign is over.
Right.
The campaign's over, so we're just in normal times. They could download the form off the internet, fill it out, and send it in. And
Where on the internet do we go to find this form?
at the CSECC.org, and at the end of the day, the training session, I'll have a slide on that. Everything is online. And I'll come to that, but it's www.csec.org. It has everything in the world you'd want to know about CSECC. The forms are online, the resource donor guides are online, campaign materials, etc. And now this training will be online. Was there another hand over here? Okay. All right, good questions. So that's the top portion, the take it out, the instruction to the state controller. So now let's go to the bottom portion. Oh, I'm sorry. No, let's see. We did the one-time gift. We did the decline, all right? And the difference between decline and delete. So now we're at the bottom portion, or the pay it out. This is the instruction to the PCFD on how to distribute your funds. And you have a couple of options. Number one, if you want to designate to a specific organization that's in the resource donor guide, you check box I, and then you write in the name of the organization. From the resource donor guide, you will get the 3-digit code, or excuse me, some are 3 or 4 or 5-digit, whatever the code is. You write the code in, and then you write the amount per organization. And you note the form says $5 minimum per organization. Does that mean if your organization is not in the resource donor guide, or does that mean can you still contribute to that 501c3? Yes, you can. That's called a write-in, which is the next box. Write-in organization. You write in the name, address, telephone number if you have it, tax ID if you have it. And I really encourage the person to write in the tax ID, because this is what happens. When this form gets submitted, a person at United Way will actually go back and validate that this is a bona fide 501c3 with the IRS. And so if you give them the tax ID, it just makes the process easier and quicker. And the tax ID is not a confidential number. You just call the nonprofit, they'll give it to you. A lot of times nonprofits will have it right on their website. It's not a confidential number like our Social Security number. So someone then validate that they are in fact a bona fide 501c3. So let me ask you, so then you write in the amounts and then the total at the bottom. You'll notice there are 3 lines for those that are in the book and 1 write-in. Does that mean they're limited to giving to 4 nonprofits? No. Give to as many as you want. I was at a training session last week and a gentleman said, yeah, I had a person who was giving to 25 nonprofits. Wow. Okay, so I'm going to answer the question you're going to ask. How do you handle that? Here's what we suggest. Ooh, 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 what's that, Warshak? Ooh, ooh, ooh. Yeah.
So we were gonna ask, how do you?
Yeah. See, I'm going to answer the question before you ask it. Yeah, I'm ahead of you. Here's what we recommend. It's just to take a blank piece of paper, write in the header information, the same as on the form, and then write in the additional nonprofits. If it's from the book, name, code, amount. If it's a write-in, you write in the write-in information, name, address, tax ID, and the amount, however many you want to do. And then when you come back to the real form, then you have to account for all those for the total amount. So let's say you are giving to 6 organizations, 4 of them from the book, 2 of them write-in. So you have 3 from the book on the form, front of the form, 1 as a write-in, and then on the blank piece of paper you have another one you've added from the book and 1 write-in. And let's say we were giving 6 and $5 each. So that's $30, correct? So you'd write in $30 total for all. Now here's a key thing. Is that clear to everyone? And how to handle, oh, I'm sorry. And then what we ask you to do is, the best thing is to staple it to the form. Where do you not want to staple? Oh, especially with the Social Security number. Absolutely. On the left side of the form. We ask probably not staple over any of the pre-printed information on the left side of the form. Staple on the right side. Because if you staple on the Social Security number, you probably goobered it up. And again, this stuff gets key entered. And if somebody can't read it, and I always tell everyone, I call it the giggle test or the smell test. If the donor intent is not crystal clear, if you have any doubt about what they really want to do, go back to them. Just in one phone call or walk down the aisleway and just say, I noticed this, was that your intent? The last thing we want to have happen again is the donor intent doesn't get executed. Do you have a question?
Yeah,